Awesome.
Oh, all right. So one of my secret joys, and Jeffrey, this is the first time you get to experience this, is I get to write down things that you've said that would make a good title. So I'm going to read my list back to you. I'm going to let you three kibitz and just let me know which one you want for the title on this episode.
Okay.
A little bit of a secret story. I don't suppose you'd like a YA novella. We fed each other. Ooh, nerd hot. Fun to find the Easter eggs. It's impossible to say. Our evolution. The FFS would be popping out. Clever and fabulous all over the world, or keep it lit with lit.
Kind of like Jeffrey's
Talk
our
amongst
evolution,
yourselves.
frankly.
Our evolution is cool. I also like, so you'd like a YA, that at least it tells you that we're dealing with YA stuff.
Yep.
It's like, ooh, nerd hot.
Yeah.
Nerd Hot's good too.
Well, so here's the thing. Every episode I tag on our site with the genre of the book being discussed or books being discussed. So don't worry about the YA thing because this episode will be tagged YA on our site already.
We could kind of go with the Ooh Nerd Hot because we're all dealing with nerds.
Yeah.
Oh, we've all written nerds.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to a science fiction convention.
Yeah.
And there are at
It
least,
doesn't get much more than that.
Yeah.
and there are at least like 4 instances of people looking at other people's butts. So
That's right.
All right, then.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Welcome to season 7, episode 16. Ooh, nerd hot. This is Written on the Edge. I'm Ben Sebastian here with my co-host, Isaiah Baz Collins.
Howdy, howdy.
And we're really glad you're here with us. We've got 3 authors for you today. Jeffrey Ricker is the author of Detours and the YA fantasy The Unwanted. His stories and essays have appeared in Foglifter, Phoebe, Little Fiction, The Citron Review, The Saturday Evening Post, and others. A 2014 Lambda Literary Fellow and recipient of a 2015 Vermont Studio Center residency. He has an MFA in creative writing from the University of British Columbia and teaches creative writing at Webster University. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
thank you very much.
J. Marshall Freeman is a writer of novels, short stories, and poetry. He's the author of young adult fantasy novel, The Dubious Gift of Dragon Blood, which he came onto the show and told us about. And the upcoming YA adventure, Barnabas Bopright Saves the City. He's a 2-time winner of the Saints and Sinners Fiction Contest, 2017 and 2019, and lives in Toronto, Canada with his husband and dog. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you.
Back, I should say.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And our returning champion.
Right? Nathan Burgoine grew up a reader and studied literature in university while making a living as a bookseller. His first novel, Light, was a finalist for a Lambda Literary Award. Triad Blood and Triad Soul are also available from Bold Strokes Books, as is his YA novel, Exit Plans for Teenage Freaks, and his first collection of Echoes Born. For novella lovers, In Memoriam, Handmade Holidays, Faux Ho Ho, Village Fool, and A Little Village Blend are shorter queer romances, often with a dash of spec fiction. A cat lover, Nathan managed to fall in love and marry Daniel, who's a confirmed dog person. They live in Ottawa, Canada, with their rescued husky, just in case you were wondering how the cat-dog thing turned out. Nathan, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So, 2 of you are returning champions, so I'm going to pick on you first. Nathan, if you want to give a quick 2-minute how you became a writer, where the spark came from.
The spark came from... Okay. The spark came from the usual place. Not seeing people like me enough in fiction. And then it was also from reading. Working at the bookstore, I bumped into so many amazing books, especially after I found out there were so many amazing queer books that hadn't been handed to me when I was younger because of gatekeepers. I started reading and writing reviews of these amazing books I found. And then some of those authors were kind enough to point me into the direction of short fiction contests. So I actually got started through writing short fiction. Fool for Love, the first anthology that ever accepted a story from me, was completely because I had written reviews about Timothy James Beck's books and made contact with the authors through the Saints and Sinners Literary Festival. So that's how I got started.
That's fantastic.
Hey, that wasn't even, that was under a minute. Good job.
Ta-da!
Can I have the extra time?
No, I was gonna ask for that.
Hey, Marshall Freeman,
split
take
it.
it away. You've got some extra time.
I guess I've been telling stories my whole life, starting when I was a kid with these elaborate panoramas on the ping pong table and all the characters from every model I'd done. And I would create these elaborate worlds that I'm still creating now. Do creative writing in university and sort of realized I had a flair for it, but it was also wrapped up in still being in the closet and not wanting to reveal myself. So I did a sidestep into doing music and other things where I could hide the reality of it better. In my 40s, a bunch of smart fangirls on LiveJournal dragged me into fan fiction. And after I wrote a 450,000 word X-Men fan fiction, I said, maybe I'll just start writing my own novels. So I started doing that.
Yeah, thanks.
And the rest is now.
That's awesome. And Jeffrey Ricker, you're new to our show. This story will be new to all of us.
Well, maybe not new to everybody, but I think like Jay Marshall, I have been writing stories, ever since I was like 8 years old and dragged a typewriter out of the backyard shed of all places, and I went on to take creative writing classes in college, and it was something that I always did. I joined a writers group in St. Louis, where I lived at the time, and from there I got into blogging in the early 2000s, and it was the usual boring I'm eating soup stuff, and but then also along the way I would talk about stories I was writing, a book I was working on, and that's how I ended up making contact with other writers who had actually published things, and some of them would point me in the direction of anthologies like Nathan. And so from there, I went down to the Saints and Sinners Literary Festival in New Orleans and got to meet some of them in person, like Nathan, and also like Greg Herron, another writer, and also was editing some of the anthologies I was in. And he basically said, "So tell me about this book you're working on." And that was my first book, Detours. And then it just sort of snowballed from there.
Fantastic. So the three of you have teamed up to write 3 Left Turns to Nowhere. And I realized I was remiss in not making sure one of you could hold up the cover.
And I should say that Bold Strokes got us together to write it. Thank you, Bold Strokes, for suggesting it.
I was going to ask how the three of you came together. So what's the story behind this novel before we ask what it's about?
That, yeah. Bold Strokes contacted us because we're all YA. We've all written YA for them. And they said, would you like to do an anthology of novellas together? And,
it was actually, there's a little bit more of a secret story behind the scenes if you would like to hear it.
I would love to hear it.
Yes.
Yeah, so right at the beginning of the pandemic, that husky we mentioned in my bio almost broke my arm. I fell on some ice. He was pulling one way. I went in another way, and I ruined the tendons from my wrist all the way up to the top of my shoulder. Didn't snap any, but strained and pulled them all, and had to start physiotherapy and could not type. So I reached out to Bold Strokes and said, I really can't do almost anything right now. I'm writing novellas. That's what I'm going to be writing for the future for a while until I can get my arm working again. I said, I don't suppose you'd like a YA novella. And the acquisitions editor got back to me and was like, how about 3 YA novellas? And I'm like, again, my speed is going to be reduced. And she's like, no. In you writing all 3. I meant, how about 3 related YA novellas? And that's actually where it came from.
Never
So
heard
it was
this
kind
before.
of my fault or my dog's fault.
Thank you, Max.
I was just say either Nathan, either thank you or you're welcome.
And we're very sorry.
Yeah.
I like the lemonade from lemons aspect to that.
Mhm.
So tell me about the book. If I pick it up, what should I expect?
You're first, Jeffrey.
Oh, for geez. Okay, so 3 Left Turns to Nowhere is a collection of 3 related novellas that all take place in a small Ontario town called Hopewell, which is a small place with a subtle kind of magic that has a tendency to bring people together and give them the things that they need. And so each of our main characters is traveling to Toronto to attend a science fiction convention, and each of them, for various reasons, winds up getting stuck in Hopewell. And in the case of my novella, Roadside Assistance, the main character is Ed Sinclair, who is a teenager from St. Louis who has just relocated to Ontario and has very few friends, and is going to this convention with the only two friends that he has, and their car breaks down. And so things develop from there, particularly involving the driver of the tow truck that comes from the garage in town. And anything else would be spoilers.
Really? Even like what he needs?
He needs to be a little less highly strung, is what he needs.
Nice.
But he ends up making some connections in an unexpected place.
Okay. Jonathan, yours is next.
Yeah. Well, Rome Epstein, short for Jerome, but he happened on Rome and liked it, is involved in the convention in Toronto. He's actually one of the organizers of a massive scavenger hunt they've been working on for months, when suddenly his grandmother in Northern Ontario has a stroke. And so just with days to the convention, they head up there to help her get out of hospital and get settled at home. And then his mother says, I'm staying, and he has this nightmarish thing. He has to drive all the way back to Toronto. And of course, he breaks down in Hopewell on the way. Rome is a city kid. And what's sort of interesting about him is he is this combination of full of bravado and full of terror. So he's the kid who's totally out and runs queer events at his school, and got this organizing thing on the scavenger hunt, and he's very political, and he wears makeup, and but he's also terrified of relationships, and as we discover, is actually extremely sexually inexperienced. So he has this kind of outer and inner, and he ends up in Hopewell meeting kind of his opposite, the person who has no queer identity and yet lots of sexual experience and experience in the town, and the town brings them together. It's kind of a simplified way of saying each of them is what the other one needs. Nice. And I hope it doesn't read quite as diagrammatically as that, but
nice. And Nathan?
Fielding Roy is the teenager who is handling it. So he's on his way to the convention, and it's actually one of the first times he's going to see his friends in over a year. He should have been starting university already, but then his uncle had a heart attack. His mother's hours got cut back at work, and so he's basically put his life on hold for a year to help take care of the family. He works in his uncle's pet food store. He's basically doing everything right. He's being the perfectly dutiful son, and he's not allowing himself to admit how awful that is. And his cousin is also missing. His cousin's in the military, and they haven't heard from him in a while, and he's got all sorts of angst and anxiety about that. And he's actually driving his cousin's car. His cousin left the car in his care, and it's a 65 Mustang. It's this beautiful car, and he knows nothing about cars, especially not muscle cars. So he already feels like a complete imposter. Yeah, he's driving across, and midway through Hopewell, there's this giant windstorm, and a tree has been knocked down across the Trans-Canada Highway. And if you know anything about Northern Ontario, you know that if there's a tree across the Trans-Canada Highway, that's it. Like, your next path around Northern Ontario is going to take you more than a day. Like, there's just no other options. So he's stuck in Hopewell till they clear the tree. And what he needs, if we're sort of dishing out what he needs to actually admit how frustrated and angry and furious he is at things that aren't anybody's fault. And he also really needs to feel connected to something, especially something queer. He's from another small town. He had really good friends. They're not queer friends though, and they're now in Toronto, and they haven't been keeping in really good contact with him because really all he can send them is texts about working at the cat and like stacking cat food. So he's really disconnected, and so what he needs more than anything is a connection to queerness and friendship, and that's definitely what he gets.
Nice. Do the three ever meet in Hopewell?
There's a walk by, but no, they never talk to each other.
Okay.
Yeah, so my character is sitting in the parking lot when Jeffrey's character has a disaster queued. And
No,
I think
actually, yeah, and Rome does meet. Does meet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, well, he meets Lynn.
He meets
Yeah,
Lynn.
he meets
Yeah,
Lynn.
Lynn from the garage picks him up when he's broken down on the Trans Canada. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, what's the magic of Hopewell?
I kind of felt like
Everyone
I didn't want
goes silent.
I think the reason that we use the term a subtle kind of magic is that, you know, although this magic kind of classifies it as SFF on some level, I think none of us is leaning heavily on it. Well,
I did.
You did, yeah. yeah. Your character actually has some kind of paranormal ability.
Yeah.
But what's happening with Rome is he keeps discovering that the town has made a scavenger hunt for him. So every time he turns around, he finds these little cards with a clue on them. And we never asked what is causing this or what. So it's not. There's no attempt to find the magic the magic witch in the forest who's doing this. It's just accepts that this is happening, and he's being pushed around by fate in the form of Hopewell, and he sometimes throws back his head and screams to Hopewell, "Leave me alone! I didn't ask for this." But okay, I'll follow.
All right.
In the case of Ed, he is literally led astray by the town in a couple of instances. He takes wrong turns. He loses his way. He actually finds his way back, but it manages to bump him into Lynn at the beginning, and they keep bumping into each other, literally in some cases, and so they end up spending time together, and it keeps nudging them in certain directions. And there's a certain there's a mystery that Lynn shares with Ed, and together they try and solve it. And in the end, they grow closer together. I guess there were a couple things that I was thinking about when it came to magic as far as the town goes. And one of them, which I actually haven't mentioned before, was the movie Chocolat. There's a hint of magic in there, because they always talk about the sly north wind, and I kept hearing that in the back of my head as I was writing. And then I drew inspiration from a few other fictional towns, which I think were kind of magical in themselves.
I definitely went overt. So Fielding has a gift that this is not unusual for my writing. So anybody who's read my stuff before, this is very much the Burgoine brand. But Fielding has the ability to sometimes see the past replaying itself. He calls it echoes. But it doesn't happen very often. It's like every other month, maybe. Like he'll see an old man sitting in a chair who wasn't there, or he talks about how there was a car accident at one point, and every now and then he'll see the person at the side of the road crying just from the stress of what happened, even though that was months and months ago. But then he gets to Hopewell, and it's like someone turns the dial to 11, and it just won't stop. And he like something about this town. He's seeing everything. He's seeing like this mailman walking around waving at people. He's like, he kind of thinks he's maybe losing his mind a little bit. And when he goes into a secondhand store, he witnesses this young woman who he's pretty sure is about his age, but is dressed in a fashion that makes him think like this is generations ago, maybe. And she's tucking something into a book, and she puts it on a shelf. And then she vanishes, and he goes and looks at the book, tries to figure out which book it might have been. He finds the right book, and there's a letter in it still, but it's just numbers. And he finally figures out it's a code, a book cipher, and he deciphers it and realizes this is a long lost love letter between two girls from generations ago. And he gets it into his head that he's stuck in this town anyway, he's going to deliver it. So he's going to try to figure out where the hell this letter is supposed to, who's supposed to get this letter. And, maybe it's too late, but wouldn't it be nice if something worked out for someone just this once? And that's his whole mindset kicking in. With a couple of friends he meets in Hopewell, they try to track down who this letter was for, who it was from, because of course it's not quite labeled. And that's the whole mystery of the story, is him trying to figure out, like, can he get this letter to where it was supposed to be?
How much time did you three spend working together on this versus how much was your stuff going directly to the editor and not through each other?
Yeah, we fed each other, definitely. We had a Google Doc with information and a map of the town that we were basing it on. And then because Nathan wrote before we did, he created a diner that all three of our characters ended up in. One of his echoes was a sculptor who uses a chainsaw on huge tree stumps to create sculptures, and his character Fielding suddenly sees this looming chainsaw person at one point, and I figured out who she was. That she was an indigenous artist who actually inspires my other character Darcy. He takes an art course with her, and it not only inspires him to be an artist, but also to explore his indigenous roots. So those ways we fed each other. Yeah, especially Nathan feeding us, I would say.
Nice.
I did have gaps. Yeah, I had gaps in my draft because I knew that my character was going to see what happened to Jeffrey's main character. But it wasn't written yet. So there's this, when I sort of by draft, I handed it into my editor. These like square brackets, like insert Jeffrey's scene here, but through my character's eyes. And then we had to go back and fix and So there was a bit of back and forth, but the document was pretty much our shared work and a couple of Zoom calls where we talked about like the settings and magic and stuff.
All right.
It's really funny that, Nathan, the one who was going into novellas because that was all he could, managed to write, was the one who finished before both of us.
Well, you both had other things on your plates.
Yeah.
I also cheated a bit when I had Lynn and Jeffrey, your character Lynn, by making Rome shy about making conversations. So he just put in his headphones and kept his head down for most of the time. So I didn't have to really write Lynn too much, but I gave him a good butt.
That's one of the things that Ed notices about him. It's also one of the things that he notices about one of the people who's working in the diner, Joshua, who is a character that I borrowed from Nathan's story.
It was actually a lot of fun to do the characters seeing each other. So I had so much, because I think Ed doesn't feel particularly attractive. Jeffrey's character, he's kind of shy and it doesn't, and my character takes one glance at him and is like, ooh, nerd hot. And it was just fun to do that, to have the characters look at each other and be like, oh, wow, yeah, and have the character themselves going, no one would ever look at me that way.
You see, you are such a sweet guy. You're such a sweet guy that when you saw a character down on himself, you had to put into your story some affirmation.
If you want a picture in your head of what Ed looks like, cross David Tennant with Brad Boimler from Lower Decks.
Okay. I can get there.
Yeah.
Anything else you want folks to know about Three Left Turns to Nowhere? It's out, Bold Strokes Books, the publisher, so we encourage people to purchase from the publisher site if you can, Amazon otherwise.
Yeah, and I think it's a fun experience to read stories which are standalone, but speak to each other. And it's fun to find the Easter eggs, and I think that they form the way our three personalities are different, and yet came together for this. I think is an interesting way to look at a book.
Awesome.
It is a case of the whole being greater than the sum of the parts.
Very much so. All right, folks. Well, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators like these guys. So if you enjoy learning about new artists, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes.
Wave.
Yeah.
So, individually, what's up next for each of you? Jeffrey, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, you're going to start with me? Nothing's up for me.
He's all
I am
laundry.
working on a book.
Right after we're doing laundry.
Oh,
And
you may laugh,
professional.
but I actually have some to fold. No. Yes, actually, I do have laundry to fold. However, when it comes to writing, I am working on another book.
Nice. We won't ask for spoilers then.
Don't ask for spoilers.
Where is the best place for people to connect with you and see what you're up to?
The best places are probably my website, jeffrey-ricker.com, and on Twitter, I am at RickerJE.
Nice. Jonathan, what's up for you?
Coming out in May from Bold Strokes Books is Barnabas Bopright Saves the City, my new YA adventure novel. And I'm just gearing up for that. It's a book about Barnabas, who lives in the greatest city on earth, but he accidentally discovers that there is a reason for the success of the city, another hidden city beside it where all the dirty work is done, and the secret has been kept for 100 years. And when he discovers that someone is going to try to destroy the big city, he can't get any of the adults actually interested in the fact that a disaster is coming, and he and his friends have to take it on alone, which is a bit of a comment on the fact that the world is burning up and can't seem to get that much interest in it. But there's amazing activist kids out there who are doing, fighting for that, fighting for gun control, fighting for all these things with intelligence and verve, and this kind of a peon to them.
That's awesome. Where's the best place for people to connect with you and follow what you're doing?
If you go to jmarshallfreeman.com, it has links to all my socials up at the top. And there should be TikTok within the next 2 weeks. I should be doing TikTok the next 2 weeks.
Fun.
But right now I've got the Insta and the Twitter and there, yeah.
Awesome. Nathan?
Up next for me, I've got I'm working on a novella still, my last of the 4 romance novellas. This is another Christmas one with a little group of 4. Felix Navidad. It's finally Felix's turn. He's the one that did the horrible April Fool's prank in Village Fool. So he finally gets his comeuppance and/or happy ending. And I'm also just starting a new project, which is terrifying. It's YA, and it's a high-low. I don't know if you've ever heard the term before, but it stands for high interest, low reading level. So it's literally trying to write a queer YA novel for kids that are maybe a bit reluctant reader or dyslexic or in other ways have struggles with reading. So that's a brand new challenge. I'm underway on that one as well.
Very nice.
Probably great for people who are new readers of English.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So where should people go to follow you and connect with what you're doing?
If they go to nathanburgoine.com, it'll lead to everywhere else. I'm probably most active in the social world on Twitter, at least until Musk buys it, in which case I will nuke it. And that's at Nathan Burgoine. It's just at Nathan Burgoine.
Perfect. All right. Any of you have words of wisdom you want to share with the world?
Words of wisdom.
I'm going to insert cricket sounds.
No, we should.
Funny cricket sounds.
I think we should have a shout out to all the queer kids, especially in all the states where in America where they're making laws to make them vanish again, run back into the closet and into the horrors of that, and other places in the world where kids can't be out in the way that they have been able to be more recently. And I hope find your way to great books, because
The only silver lining I'll put in that is that I think this provides an opportunity for our generation to teach the younger generation how to step into those advocacy roles and really start to voice themselves, because that's the work we did, so
yeah,
there's a chance we could bridge the age gap and kind of bring them forward. So, and say,
and also a special message to Canadians. I'm going to put the special message to Canadians in there not to get complacent, because the same laws are starting to show up in Alberta. So we're in no better position.
Right.
The new conservatism is a world disease, and every country's following the same pattern, the same talking points. That's one of the joys of the global world.
So we need,
we
we
can
need to use
also
our,
well, we can also learn how to fight the same way. So if it works in one place, we can also export that fight.
It's always really hard when when darkness is gathering like this to find the light, but it's also more important than ever at times like this to do just that. So find it and keep it lit.
and share it with others.
Keep it lit with lit.
There you go. Lit. Ooh, I like that.
All right, folks. Written on the Edges, produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.roguepodcast.com. If you enjoy learning about new artists, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. We'd like to extend a huge thank you to Jeffrey Ricker, J. Marshall Freeman, and Nathan Burgoine for joining us. You guys, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Our
Thank you. It's
pleasure.
great.
Now, pick up 3 Left Turns to Nowhere from Bold Strokes Books. Sit back and enjoy the intertwined lives of these 3 young men who didn't know what they needed till they got to Hopewell. We'll talk to you all again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.